Here's what Nafisa Collier had to say about the protest after the game.
The players of what is building this brand and this league.
Let's take a trip back in time, not to a distant era, but to the world of just a few years ago. For those who weren't paying close attention, the Women's National Basketball Association existed on the periphery of the American sports landscape.
Could the WNBA be headed to a lockout?
Everything is pointing to a player strike.
It was, for many, a punchline on sports talk radio, a convenient target for cynics who would gleefully post photos of empty seats in the upper deck.
The negotiations are stalled, then we could see a lockout.
The prevailing, often misogynistic narrative was one of a league perpetually on life support, an enterprise artificially subsidized by the NBA, a product that, according to its loudest and most persistent detractors, simply couldn't stand on its own 2 feet. For decades, the league fought not for dominance, but for survival. It battled for a sliver of media coverage, for a fraction of the marketing budgets, for a baseline of the respect automatically afforded to its male counterparts. Teams came and went, folding in cities like Miami, Portland, and Cleveland, each departure leaving a scar and fueling the narrative of instability. This was a league that endured on the sheer, unadulterated grit of its athletes. Stars like Cynthia Cooper, Cheryl Swoops, and Lisa Leslie, the league's original titans, played for the love of the game and the hope of building something for the next generation, because the widespread fame and generational wealth certainly weren't part of the contract. They were pioneers hacking a path through a dense, unwelcoming jungle. Now, let the hum of that past fade. Open your eyes and ears to the reality of today, August 2025. The jungle has been transformed into a vibrant, teeming ecosystem. The WNBA is not just surviving, it is spectacularly, undeniably thriving. It is, without a shred of hyperbole, the hottest and fastest growing sports league in America. This isn't a quiet renaissance. It is a full-blown revolution. It's the golden era that the pioneers could only have dreamed of. Arenas are no longer just occupied. They are electric, pulsating with the energy of a new, diverse, and passionate fan base. Games are selling out, forcing teams to move to larger NBA venues simply to meet the crushing demand for tickets. Television ratings are not just creeping upwards. They are shattering records on a near-weekly basis. Across multiple networks, the league is minting superstars at an astonishing rate. Caitlin Clark, a generational talent, arrived in the league not as a promising rookie, but as a cultural phenomenon, bringing a legion of fans who followed her every move from college. Angel Reese, with her unapologetic swagger and championship pedigree, became an instant icon. But the foundation of this boom is deeper than just 2 players. It is A'ja Wilson, the league's reigning MVP and defensive anchor, building a formidable dynasty in Las Vegas. It is Sabrina Ionescu, the New York Liberty's charismatic leader, a triple-double machine who embodies the modern, positionless player. It is Breanna Stewart, a 2-time MVP whose quiet consistency belies her fierce competitiveness. It is the veterans like Diana Taurasi still competing at the highest level, bridging the gap between the league's past and its explosive present. These women are more than just athletes. They are powerful brands, skilled entrepreneurs, and influential voices in the cultural conversation. They are discussed, debated, and celebrated on every platform, from ESPN to TikTok. One would assume, then, that the league's corporate headquarters would be a scene of unbridled jubilation. One would imagine Commissioner Cathy Engelbert and the Board of Governors raising champagne glasses, eager to share the spoils of this newfound prosperity with the very women who engineered it. Instead, the house is in a state of quiet panic, because this beautiful, gleaming palace of success, adorned with record profits and sold-out crowds, has been constructed upon a dangerously unstable foundation. Behind the slick marketing and celebratory press releases, the entire league is teetering on the precipice of a self-inflicted, catastrophic implosion. The players, the heart, lungs, and soul of this entire enterprise have collectively decided that their patience has expired. They are demanding a revolution in their compensation, a real, tangible share of the vast revenue they generate, and a baseline of professional dignity that has, for too long, been treated as a luxury rather than a right. A massive league shuddering. Lockout is no longer a distant, abstract threat. It has become the most likely outcome of a negotiation that has turned sour. And the clock is ticking, each second a deafening beat marking. The approach of a deadline that could either usher in an era of unprecedented partnership or plunge the league into a self-inflicted dark age. Every revolution has its shot heard, round the world. For the players of the WNBA, it wasn't a volley of muskets, but the silent, defiant act of pulling on a t-shirt. The setting was the WNBA All-Star Weekend, a multi-day event designed to be the league's premier celebration. It's a time for showcasing the best talent, engaging with fans, and presenting a polished, unified front to corporate sponsors and broadcast partners. The players, however, had a different plan. In a meticulously coordinated act of protest, over 40 of the league's most prominent players, including its biggest stars, took to the court for their warm-ups. They emerged from the tunnels not in their brightly colored all-star jerseys, but in simple, stark black shirts. Emblazoned across the chest, in bold, white, sans serif font were 4 simple words that carried the weight of 28 years of frustration. Pay us what you owe us. This was not a spontaneous outburst. This was a calculated, media-savvy masterstroke. The players and their union, the WNBA, understood that to capture the narrative, they had to perform on the biggest stage. They chose the league's marquee event to stage their hijacking. There was no ambiguity, no room for misinterpretation by commentators or executives. It was a direct, public challenge to the league's power structure, broadcast live on national television for all to see. This unified act of defiance is the flashpoint of a conflict centered on a single, critical legal document, the Collective Bargaining Agreement, or CBA. For the uninitiated, the CBA is the bedrock of any professional sports league. It is the master contract negotiated between the players' union and the league's owners that governs every aspect of the players' professional lives. It dictates salary scales, revenue sharing, healthcare benefits, maternity leave, travel standards, free agency rules, and the very disciplinary procedures that hold the league accountable. The current CBA was once hailed as groundbreaking when it was signed in 2020, led by the then WNBA president, Nika Ogwumike. The players secured significant gains, including higher salaries, fully paid maternity leave, and better travel accommodations. But that contract contained a crucial provision, an opt-out clause. This clause gave the players the power to terminate the agreement 1 year early, if they felt that the league's financial landscape had changed so dramatically that the deal was no longer equitable in 2023. Seeing the geyser of new revenue beginning to erupt, the players exercised that right. It was a higher risk, higher reward strategic gamble, effectively tearing up the existing contract and forcing the league back to the negotiating table. That decision is what triggered the current crisis. And that crisis has a hard, unmovable deadline, October 31st, 2025. Yes, this year. As I speak to you in the first week of August, we are less than 90 days from that deadline. The season will end, a champion will be crowned, and then the league will face a Halloween deadline for what could be a horror story, ending to its own triumphant season. With the league now profitable and its growth trajectory vertical, an observer might assume that negotiations would be collaborative, a simple matter of adjusting the numbers to reflect the new reality. That assumption would be tragically, profoundly wrong. The league and the WNBPA had already engaged in 2 formal bargaining sessions during that same fateful All-Star weekend. The outcome, a complete and utter stalemate. Sources from within the players' camp described the meetings as an epic fail. They spoke of a dynamic where the players' representatives came to the table armed with meticulously prepared data, charts projecting revenue growth, and a clear, partnership-oriented vision for the future. The league's representatives, in contrast, were said to have responded with corporate platitudes, deflection, and an unwillingness to engage with the players' core economic proposals. The players left the room feeling not just unheard, but insulted. This is why the T-shirts were not just a protest. They were a direct consequence of the league's failure to negotiate in good faith. The players are no longer asking politely. They are demanding, and their demands are clear. A comprehensive survey of WNBPA members revealed their priorities with startling clarity. An overwhelming 70% identified higher salaries directly tied to a greater share of league revenue as their number one priority. The remaining 30% focused on foundational professional standards, a significant increase in roster spots to create more jobs and lessen the physical burden on current players. The implementation of enforceable, league-wide minimum standards for practice facilities and medical staff, and enhanced resources for the dozens of mothers in the league, including childcare and family support. The collective message is undeniable. The women who are the product, the show, and the singular reason for the league's newfound success feel that they are being treated as expendable cogs in a machine that is enriching everyone but them. To understand the depth of the players' frustration, one must first grasp the sheer scale of the WNBA's current commercial success. This isn't a gentle, upward trend. It is a violent, explosive expansion happening across every conceivable metric. The story of the league's business is no longer one of hopeful projections. It is a story of staggering, verifiable numbers. Let's begin with the most fundamental measure of interest: people showing up. League-wide attendance is up a remarkable 13% from just last season. The average crowd size has swelled to over 11,000 fans per game. To put that figure in its proper context, in 2022, the average was a mere 5,600. The league has effectively doubled its live audience in 24 months. This is not normal. This is a historic rate of growth, the kind of expansion that seasoned sports executives spend their entire careers hoping to witness once. Ticket sales revenue, as a direct result of this interest, has climbed by an even more impressive 26%. Games are no longer just events. They are destinations. The Caitlin Clark effect has been a primary driver, a phenomenon unto itself. The Indiana Fever, her team, has seen its attendance skyrocket by over 180%. But this is not a one-woman show. Teams are reporting franchise record crowds for games against the Las Vegas Aces, the New York Liberty, and the Chicago Sky. The demand is real, it is widespread, and it is unprecedented. This explosion is mirrored in the television and streaming viewership numbers. The WNBA's broadcast partners, ESPN, ABC, and Scripps Sports, for ION, are reaping the benefits. The 2024 WNBA Draft, headlined by Clark, Reese, and Camila Cardozo, drew an average of 2.45 million viewers, shattering the previous record by over 300%. Regular season games on national television are routinely drawing over 1 million viewers, with some marquee matchups approaching 2 million. Numbers that rival or even beat those of established men's professional sports leagues like Major League Soccer or the National Hockey League. The engagement extends far beyond the television screen. The league has captured the notoriously fickle attention of the digital world. The 2024 All-Star fan vote is perhaps the most stunning statistic of all. In 2023, the total number of fan ballots cast was just over 96,000. In 2024, that number exploded to 1.29 million. That represents a 1,240% increase in a single year. This isn't just a spike, it is a paradigm shift. It signifies a fan base that is deeply invested, knowledgeable about the players, and passionate about participating in the league's narrative. Social media engagement, merchandise sales, and fantasy league participation have all seen similar exponential growth. If you want to understand where the smart money believes the league is headed, look no further than the value of the franchises themselves. This is where the numbers become truly eye-watering. In 2023, the Golden State Valkyries, an expansion team backed by the owners of the NBA's Golden State Warriors, joined the league for a fee of $50 million. At the time, it was a record. Today, it looks like the bargain of the century. Business analysts now estimate the value of that same Valkyries franchise, just over 1 year later, to be in excess of $500 million. That is a 10x return on investment without the team having played a single game. This valuation is not an anomaly. It has set a new market standard. The WNBA has announced further expansion, with new teams set to join in Cleveland, Detroit, and Philadelphia between 2028 and 2030. The expansion fee for each of these new teams, a colossal $250 million. That is a five-fold increase in the league's entry price in less than 2 years. Let's be unequivocally clear about what this means. The current owners, the very people telling the players that resources are limited, are simultaneously telling prospective new owners that a slice of this league is worth $250 million. They are selling a vision of immense future. Profitability, a vision predicated on a forthcoming media rights deal that is expected to dwarf their current agreement. They see the gold rush coming. They are selling shovels to new prospectors for an astronomical price, while telling the miners who are actually digging the gold that they must make do with their old rusty pickaxe. At the heart of this conflict lies a single, morally indefensible number. It is the number that exposes the deep, structural inequity of the WNBA's economic model. It is the revenue split in the National Basketball Association. Decades of hard-fought labor negotiations have resulted in a system where the players receive approximately 50% of all designated basketball-related income. BRE. It is a genuine partnership. When the league thrives, its players share directly in that success. Their fortunes are intertwined in the WNBA. The current CBA stipulates that players receive a much more complex and less favorable share. When all the calculations are done, it is estimated that the player's total compensation amounts to just 9.3% of the league's total revenue. 9.3%. Let that number hang in the air. It is not a pay gap, it is a chasm. It is a moral and economic Grand Canyon that separates the value the players create from the compensation they receive. This abysmal percentage is the source code for a salary structure that is not just unfair, but frankly insulting to the world-class athletes who are subject to it. The minimum salary for a player in the WNBA is approximately $66,000 per year. For a rookie, it's slightly higher, around $76,000. Now, imagine being one of the top 144 basketball players on the planet and trying to build a life in a major American city like New York, Los Angeles, or Chicago on that income. If you ascend to the absolute pinnacle of the sport, if you become an MVP, a champion, a perennial all-star, you can earn the WNBA's maximum supermax salary, which is approximately $249,000. Now, for the sake of context, let's place those numbers alongside their NBA counterparts. The absolute minimum salary for a player on the end of an NBA bench is $1.27 million for the upcoming season. A player on a two-way contract who splits his time between the NBA and the G League makes over half, $1 million. So, the 15th man on an NBA roster, a player who may log more minutes on Twitter than on the court, makes 5 times more than the reigning MVP of the WNBA. This grotesque disparity is not just about luxury. It has profound real-world consequences. It is the reason why a vast majority of WNBA players have historically been forced to play basketball year-round. During their supposed off-season, they travel to leagues in Turkey, Russia, China, or Australia. Not for a passion project, but out of financial necessity. They subject their bodies to a relentless 365-day grind, dramatically increasing their risk of career-threatening injuries, simply to earn a living that is commensurate with their elite talent. When critics and cynics deploy the tired argument, but the NBA generates billions more in revenue, they are deliberately missing the point. The WNBPA's demand is not for the same dollar amount as the NBA players. Their demand is for the same proportional share. They are not asking for a handout. They are asking for a percentage. They want a system where if the league's revenue doubles, the player compensation pool also doubles. It is a demand for a fair partnership, a rejection of a system that treats them as hired help in a house they built. The economic disparity is the core issue, but it is symptomatic of a broader institutional mindset that has often treated its players as an afterthought. The league's operational history is riddled with examples of mismanagement and a reactive, rather than proactive, approach to player welfare. The recent implementation of full-time charter flights is a perfect case study. For years, the sight of the world's best female athletes navigating the chaos of commercial air travel was a recurring source of embarrassment and outrage. Imagine A'ja Wilson, a 6'4" MVP crammed into a middle seat for a 5-hour flight, only to be expected to perform at a championship level a day later. Imagine Brittany Griner, a prominent and recognizable figure, being subjected to harassment from trolls while waiting in a security line. These were not isolated incidents, they were the norm. The Las Vegas Aces were so exhausted by a 25-hour travel ordeal in 2018 that they chose to forfeit a game rather than risk their players' health. After years of public pressure from players, fans, and the media, the league finally relented and agreed to fund a full-time charter flight program for all teams. They announced this $50 million investment over 2 years as if it were a revolutionary act of benevolence. In reality, it was the correction of a long-standing professional failure. It was the league begrudgingly catching up to the minimum standard that has existed in every other major professional sports league for decades. It was not a gift. It was the payment of a long-overdue debt of professionalism. And even more damaging, systemic issue is the league's minuscule roster size. With only 12 spots per team, the WNBA has the smallest rosters in major American pro sports. This creates a ruthless, unforgiving employment landscape. Every year, highly touted draft picks, players who were stars in college just weeks earlier, are cut before their rookie seasons even begin. There is no room for development, no space for project players. It creates a valley of death for talent that falls between being an immediate star and being out of the league. This is not just a jobs issue. It is a player health and product quality issue. The small rosters force coaches to play their stars for excessive minutes, leading to fatigue, burnout, and a higher incidence of injuries. It also diminishes the quality of the on-court product by robbing teams of strategic depth. The league's solution to its own success has been to expand by adding more teams, yet it refuses to address the fundamental flaw of not having enough jobs for the talent that already exists. It is a strategy of building more houses while refusing to furnish the ones you already own. For much of its history, the WNBA's marketing efforts could be described as lackluster at best. The league often struggled to build and promote its transcendent stars to a mainstream audience. Players like Maya Moore, Diana Taurasi, Sue Bird, and Candace Parker were legends. Yet outside of dedicated fan circles, they rarely received the level of promotion their talent warranted. The current boom is not the result of a brilliant top-down marketing strategy from the league office. It is the result of the players themselves taking control of their own narratives. They built their own brands on social media platforms like Instagram and TikTok. They showcased their personalities, their fashion, and their lives off the court, creating direct connections with millions of fans. They created the content, the storylines, and the rivalries that have made the league so compelling. The league is not leading this charge. It is desperately trying to catch up to the cultural wave that its own players created. Nature abhors a vacuum, and so does the marketplace. The WNBA's failure to fully meet the professional and financial needs of its players created an opening. And into that opening has stepped a new, powerful, and potentially disruptive force. Unrivaled is not just another overseas league. It is a direct, homegrown challenge to the WNBA's hegemony. Scheduled to launch in January 2026, it is a new 3-on-3 basketball league, based in a single location in Miami. But its most revolutionary feature is not its format. It is its ownership structure. The league was co-founded by two of the WNBA's brightest stars, Nafisa Collier and Breanna Stewart. Its business plan is explicitly player-centric. It offers salaries that are competitive with, and in many cases, higher than what players can earn in the WNBA. More importantly, it offers its top players something the WNBA never has: equity. The players are not just employees, they are part owners. This is the WNBA's worst nightmare brought to life. Unrivaled is backed by a formidable list of investors that reads like a who's who of sports and business. NBA stars like Carmelo Anthony and Steve Nash, soccer legends Alex Morgan and Megan Rapinoe, and prominent business figures and team owners. This is not a fledgling startup. It is a well-funded, professionally managed organization with immense credibility from day one. Unrivaled represents more than just competition. It represents leverage. For the first time in the WNBA's history, the players have a viable, attractive, domestic alternative. This completely transforms the power dynamics of the CBA negotiation. The players are no longer asking for a better deal. They are in a position to demand one. Their unspoken threat is now palpable. Meet our terms, or we will take our talent, our fans, and our celebrity to a league that we own and control. The players are not being subtle about this newfound leverage. When Nafisa Collier appeared on the live ESPN broadcast of the WNBA All-Star Draft, she was wearing a stylish, Unrivaled t-shirt, sitting just feet away from Commissioner Engelbert. She smiled for the cameras, a calm and confident act of public defiance. It was a masterclass in psychological warfare, a clear and unmistakable message sent to every executive, owner, and fan. It was the visual embodiment of a power shift. The players were announcing that they had built their own lifeboat, and they were not afraid to use it. This brings us back to the precipice. As the October 31st deadline approaches, the WNBA stands at a historic crossroads. The path forward diverges into two starkly different futures. Two potential realities that will define the league for decades to come. Path A, the partnership. In this future, the league's owners recognize the historic moment. They step back from the brink, abandon their old-world negotiating tactics, and embrace the players as true partners. A new long-term CBA is signed. It includes a significant, phased-in increase in the players' share of revenue, moving it towards a more equitable percentage. Salaries rise across the board, creating a financially viable career path for every player in the league, not just the top superstars. The league and the union work together to expand roster spots, invest in player development, and continue to improve professional standards, bolstered by labor, peace, and a unified front. The WNBA secures a monumental new media rights deal that injects hundreds of millions of new dollars into the ecosystem. The league's growth accelerates, solidifying its place as a major global sports powerhouse. This is the future of shared prosperity, a win-win scenario where a rising tide lifts all ships. Path B, the Great War. In this future, the owners dig in their heels. They misread the players' resolve, underestimate their leverage, and refuse to cede any significant ground on the core economic issues. The deadline passes without a deal. The league plunges into a bitter, protracted lockout. The 2026 season is lost. The momentum that took years to build evaporates in a matter of months. The narrative of exciting growth is replaced by a toxic story of greed and labor strife. The fans, particularly the new ones, become disillusioned and turn their attention elsewhere. And in the void left by the WNBA's absence, Unrivaled flourishes. It signs dozens of the WNBA's biggest stars, secures its own television deal, and becomes the premier destination for women's professional basketball in America. When the WNBA finally returns, it is a diminished product, a league that has lost its stars, its fans, and its credibility. It becomes a cautionary tale of corporate hubris, a story of how a league fumbled its own golden era. The choice between these two futures rests squarely on the shoulders of the 13 ownership groups and Commissioner Cathy Engelbert. This is no longer just a business negotiation. It is a test of their vision, their leadership, and their legacy. Will they be remembered as the forward-thinking pioneers who nurtured a revolution in women's sports? Or will they go down in history as the stubborn, short-sighted executives who killed their own golden goose? The players have made their position clear. They have built the house. They have furnished it with their talent, their charisma, and their sweat. They are no longer content to be treated as temporary guests. They are demanding the keys. The entire sports world is watching. The clock is ticking.